if you have an instinct, the thing you really have to fight is talking about it rather than doing it, right? Because there is a thing that happens when you have a great idea and you start telling it to people. They say that that takes the onus off of you actually doing it. So if you post on social media, I got this big idea, you're less likely to do it because you've already been satisfied. I already told you that I got a great idea. I don't have to show you. And so I think that's kind of a trap that people can get in, but it's very dangerous. You must act. You must act.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. So we're here with a very special guest today on Friday the 13th, which I think is nice and fun.
I didn't even
and
realize that.
But this is Joel Hodgson. He is a puppeteer, ventriloquist, magician, and also the creator of the Peanut Butter Beans and MSD3K.
I made you guys eat peanut butter beans, yeah.
So anything you want to say kind of about who you are before we jump in?
Oh, yeah. So I'm the creator of Mystery Science Theater 3000. We're really lucky to get to bring back the show almost 8 years ago through a series of really successful Kickstarter campaigns. The first one we raised $7 million and allowed us to bring back the show, and it's since been on Netflix. We have 20 episodes on Netflix, and then we did another Kickstarter that was around $7 million that allowed us to do season 13, where we had our, basically our own streaming service in the Gizmoplex. And so over the period of us doing that, I got to bring in you guys, the Edge of Cinema guys, to help us with all the various production stuff we had rolling when we were working in Horsham. And we did a third Kickstarter. It wasn't successful, and that was kind of the universe saying to me, we've done plenty good with this, and we're really grateful to have brought it back. But then we shut down my production company, which is Alterniversal. So we haven't gotten to work together since then. But we've stayed in touch, and I think some of our old gear is around here, right?
Yeah. I think some of these lights we have on us right now.
Some of our gear. And so that's how we met, right? And got to work together on various things. So we're really grateful to know you guys and grateful to be here.
Of course. Thanks so much for coming in.
And it's Friday the 13th. So what happens on Friday the 13th is bad. I don't know the nomenclature.
I don't know either.
Bad things happen, or
I think of that. What was it, that Donald Duck short where he's like delivering that package? It's like a clock, but it's ticking like he thinks it's a bomb the whole time.
God. That's back when you could do stuff like that.
He breaks the glass, goes under a ladder, black cats.
Everything goes wrong.
Right. So I guess it's a bad day.
Murders people.
Yeah, that's right. Who was Jason Voorhees? Which movie was?
I think
series?
Jason was Friday the 13th.
That's Friday the 13th? Okay, I got you. Yeah, Mike Myers was Halloween.
Oh, right, of course.
I do have a story about the movie Halloween. Did you guys? That's so before your time, man. Right? That was I was in college when that came out. And I got to tell you a story. There's a kid that I was friends with, Larry Erickson, and he had this amazing bit because, in the climax of Halloween, when you're expecting, what's his name? Jason, right? Jason to be lying on the ground and he's vanished. He had a Inside Out Captain Kirk mask, right? That's what they used, right? And he would stand up in the theater at that moment, and people went insane. They thought because it was a really well-made, obviously a really well-made movie, and it was electrifying. But he would actually, kind of break the fourth wall and be in the theater with you. It was amazing. So, kind of changed my life.
You experienced that live?
What's that?
You experienced that?
Yeah. I was in there, and he just would bring it along. And at that critical moment where you expect to see him dead on the ground, he's not there, and he'd stand up in the
his
theater and
silhouette
people
popped
would
up.
flip out. That's when, that's when people were going to movie theaters.
How many
and
times
there
did you
was-
guys do that?
I was only with him once when he
Okay.
did it, but I think he repeated it because it worked so good, and it was a great moment. It was amazing.
That was something my dad was like. He always looks back on when he was little. He's like 70 now. So like in New York growing up, the movies they'd play like 2 features and a bunch of shorts, and you could just go and stay all day long and
Like
watch
Times
it
Square,
again.
like
Yeah.
back then, like in
Well, it was like in Brooklyn. I'm not sure
yeah,
where
right
he was,
on.
but he was
Yeah.
saying like the theaters back then, when you went to a movie, you could just stay as long as you wanted. So you'd like come in halfway through a movie, watch that one, then the shorts, then the next one, and then watch the first half of the other one, or just keep going. It was
I
just
think-
somewhere to be.
I think, to be fair, that was probably your dad's own rule. I don't think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that
I don't
legal?
think
Or?
he probably said it to you like, yeah, it's encouraged. You pay one ticket price and watch all the movies, right? It's all you can watch, right?
yeah.
That wasn't true. Your dad was skipping around in theaters. If he got caught, he'd get kicked out.
Maybe.
To be the one to tell you. But yeah, it was an amazing time, and when movie openings, right? It just meant so much back in the day. But yeah, that's from my generation.
Yeah, like so when you were growing up, I kind of want to get a little bit into like how did you get into like ventriloquism and some of that magic stuff when you were little? Like what was the inspiration back then? Because now we have YouTube, you can find it all. Like where would you even find inspiration back then?
I gotta tell you, it was through the church, man. We had a guy in my church, Faith Community Church in Fort Atkinson, and Charlie Fairchild, and he did magic. And I mean, I remember sitting there in Sunday school watching him do this, and I just couldn't get over it. And it was mostly the props. Like I'd never seen props like that, like the things that a magician brings on stage with him. There's all these peculiar things, and I always thought they were amazing. And I couldn't believe my good fortune that I knew Mr. Fairchild, Joe Fairchild. And
Was he just a local guy?
he was a guy, yeah, he was just a local guy. He did Santa in our town. We lived in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, so it was a little town, but they had the Santa booth in town. He was the Santa. He was a clown, and he did magic. And I remember going up to him and saying, "Where did you get this stuff?" And he goes, "I got it at a magic supply house." And he didn't tell me where. And then later, I met a kid who was really into magic, and he told me about Abbott's Magic Company, which was in Colon, Michigan. And they printed a great big catalog. They said it's as big as a phone book, back in the day, this is when they had phone books. And it was a great big catalog with all these illustrations. And I just couldn't believe getting it and then starting to order stuff. And then I slowly just started doing shows for birthday parties.
How old were you when you started doing that?
Like in probably 5th grade, 6th grade. And so I was just fascinated with it. It was so, show business was so far away from central Wisconsin at that time. So I was just real curious, like, how does that happen and how do you do it? And so I just started performing, and my dad was also really funny, and he loved doing that kind of entertaining too. He would MC weddings, and he was a funny guy and would do funny things all the time. He originally, I'll tell you one bit that my dad used to do that was very, was an indicator for me when I was a kid. But he did this really funny thing where he was he was a teacher, and in the Fort Atkinson school system there, and in the summer, the guys who were teaching would work on lawn maintenance for the school. So that was kind of what they did during the summer. And my dad was moving something up into an attic in one of the grade schools, and he found this big case that had all these magic lantern slides, these glass slides. And he said, and this was connected to a really old magic lantern projector that would never be used now. So he knew it was antiquated. He knew it'd never be used. He said, "Do you want this? Can I buy this from you?" And they I can't remember the deal they made, but he ended up procuring all these slides, and he started doing slideshows and kind of personalizing it to the people in the room. So he's basically movie riffing old slides, and kind of assigning meaning to them based on people in the room. And I remember growing up with that, and obviously it's like really clearly similar to movie riffing and Mystery Science Theater, right? And I just said to him, I go, how did you get to that? And he goes, oh, well, it was in, they used to have funny calendars where they'd put a old photo and then they'd put a funny remark underneath. And he goes, I just saw that and thought I'd try that. So he kind of pioneered a little bit of that. And I didn't really dawn on me till years later, like, oh my God, that was like very similar to movie riffing.
Was he one of those guys who was like encouraging the silliness and creative side of you, or were you kind of like, get a good job, but you can have fun at the same time?
He didn't. It was really funny. I think it was kind of invisible to us as far as like what he was doing and what I was doing. I think he was just living his life, and I was kind of observing him, but he was very creative, would always make funny Halloween costumes. I remember when I was a really little kid, we went, I remember going we lived in Duluth, Minnesota for a year, and he was getting his master's degree. And we drove to this place that was a bakery, and he bought this great big cardboard barrel. And he made some deal with the guy, and next thing I know, we're loading this big barrel into the car, and he put suspenders on it, and it was kind of like he went there's you'd see this in political cartoons, a poor guy, right, with a barrel, right? He has he's so poor, he has no clothes, he must carry a barrel to cover himself. And that's what my dad went as, but he, was clever because he had a swimsuit on, but it looked like he was walking around naked with this barrel on that had straps on. But that was him, and again, that was the texture of kind of like a pre-digital world where you entertained each other a lot more. You were kind of doing that, and the church was like that too. The church was always a little suspicious of Hollywood, as it should be, and kind of like, whoa, do we want our families and our kids observing this? Is this part of our culture? Do we agree? So they always kind of had a healthy suspicion about it, and so a lot of times they would do stuff on their own. They'd amuse themselves or do parties or whatever, and my dad was really in that culture, and so I kind of got to see that, and it was a really great place for me because the church was, because once I started doing shows, I'd get booked for all these birthday parties, people we knew through the church, or even events, right? Father-daughter banquets. So there's all these places for me to get up and do my magic. So you get a little better each time. And then by the time, I was doing shows regularly, and any money I'd get, I'd buy more magic. So I was just learning how to be a producer, right? And kind of like, how do you make content, and how do you get in front of people and stuff like that. So that was just this path. I was that kid who was into magic, like the kid in your high school who wanted to do magic or whatever. I was that guy. So I think that's kind of how it started. And then once I got into college, I was even more interested in it, and loved comedy, and like guys like Andy Kaufman and Steve Martin and all these amazing cats that were Paul Rubens was doing Pee Wee Herman, and I was seeing all that stuff and kind of thought, well, I have this like quirky magic, I could maybe do something with it. So I was ready. It just, the timing was perfect when I was in college, and I just started doing stand-up at that time. So my senior year of college, I looked at my calendar, and I think it was on stage like 100 times that my senior year. I was doing shows on the weekend and being a student during the week. So that's kind of it. And then as soon as college was done, I went to LA and I started being a stand-up.
That's funny you brought up Pee Wee. I was going to say, like, I was one of those kids. I wasn't as deep as you with magic, but I always just loved that kind of silliness. I had like the Charlie McCarthy ventriloquist dummy with the string in the back, but I think Pee-wee's Big Adventure is the greatest example of what one of those eternal kids would, like, anyone who had millions of dollars once they grow up, like his house in that, where it's like he gets up with the Rube Goldberg breakfast thing.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Oh, I got to get to the magic shop. You can take your big crazy butt. It was like he was living the life.
A really,
in that.
really fun, lovely thing. Yeah. So I agree with you. That was really amazing. And I guess there's the new doc is that there's a new doc on him out now that
Yeah, I
haven't
didn't see
seen
that
yet.
yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. A guy I work with now, Wayne White. We do a benefit every year in Madison in January, and he was the guy who built all the puppets for Pee Wee's Playhouse and performed most of them too. So he said it was really good. So I've heard it's great.
That's good. I'm like hesitant. Like, I remember watching the Three Stooges documentary. It was like so depressing. It's like they were all in pain and depressed. It's like I don't want to know that side of it.
They got $15 a movie.
Yeah,
yeah. I know what you mean.
Curly
yeah,
had a stroke and he was suffering on set those last 20 shorts.
That's right. And then the Curly Joes, burning through all the different ones, Curly Joe Doritos and
That's
all
good.
that. Yeah,
I'll watch the
I know,
Pee-wee thing if it's
I
not
know
gonna
what you mean.
Destroy it. Yeah.
I know what you mean, and I think what was unique about Paul Rubens, and I got to know him. It was great. We were friends, and he pulled me into a couple of his projects after Pee-wee. He was often because Pee-wee was such this kind of landmark show that he just always kept getting development deals. So I got pulled into a couple of those and got to work with him, and it was really fun. But the unique thing about him was he, as opposed to the Three Stooges, is he maintained the copyright on all of Pee-wee stuff. So he controlled that, which is very unique. I mean, most performers, most actors don't get to do that kind of stuff. So he kind of was able to control, as you're even seeing now, and after he's passed, he was able to kind of participate. I'm assuming, because it was a big doc, and I don't know how much he was involved, but I know that he was very good at controlling his stuff while he was around.
Yeah, not to go too deep on Pee-wee, but while we're on the top, I remember reading some interview. He had some idea for a movie that he couldn't get anyone to fund it because it was crazy, but it was like Pee-wee was in like a mental institution and was getting like shock therapy, and like it was like this like dark thing. He like went to Hollywood and got to be famous and got famous, and then went crazy. He was getting shock therapy and had to get it. Was like, it sounded like the coolest Pee-wee movie ever if it was done right.
Amazing,
it was like
amazing. Yeah. I was really grateful to get to know him.
Yeah, that's amazing. You got to actually like hang out and work with him.
I was in college when his Pee-wee's Playhouse, which was the live show that
like
really, took over. It's just this electrifying event in Hollywood, and they recorded it, and I saw that, and I just like couldn't get over how great it was, and completely, when I met him, acknowledged how big of an influence he was on me, and Pee-wee's Playhouse was. And to me, more than anything, they really had this in-camera world that was really electric and beautiful.
They did like all practical effects.
Yeah,
on that
really
show. It was crazy.
a lot. Yeah, they do special little animated pieces and things they had done in post, but it was so seamlessly integrated. Like just so clever, the idea of doing stop motion in the refrigerator. What's in the refrigerator, and you'd see a little stop action movie of all the fruits and vegetables talking or doing something. So hugely imaginative and wonderful. So
I'm curious, when you were young and just getting started, like from a business perspective, did you approach this when you're in 5th or 6th grade from like a business mindset? Were you thinking like an entrepreneur or more as an artist?
Well, I don't feel like I ever, I think business-wise, it was hard for me because I was always kind of creative first and felt like that was the easiest, best. I was strongest at that. And the business stuff came way later, and really through working with other people that were better at it than me, that I could rely on. And so I've I think I haven't. I think those people are very unique who are creative and good at business. It usually drops one way or the other, and then you can, get assistance, right? If you're better at business and want help with the creative, or better at creative, need help with the business. I think mostly it was super simple when I started out because it was clubs, and so you could kind of do the math, right? Like you could see how many people were in the audience. You knew how much they were paying to get in. There usually was a split of the door, a split of the door, but also alcohol, right? Because if you're in a club, and people drank more back then, and so there was always that was revenue too, because they'd pay back then they'd pay like $5 or $10 to get in the club, and then buy drinks as well. And so super easy to kind of go, okay, well, if I go in and I drop in and I do 5 shows over the course of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I'll make a certain amount of money, my nut that you negotiate, and then after that there's sometimes above and beyond that. If you do better, there's money on the other side. So usually you negotiate ahead of time. What also worked really good was I started doing national shows like Letterman and Saturday Night Live, and then that just makes it better, and the clubs are much more interested in having you come, and because you can draw people. So that was a really simple little kind of path that I was able to follow, because it was really about creating new content, getting on its feet in a club, and then showing it on these various shows. And then I was really happy to do that kind of work. I was really loved doing that kind of work, and I liked the people I was meeting in Hollywood were wonderful. There were a lot of great magicians. The Magic Castle was there. That was my first gig, and I was like a bad comic magician, and so a bad magician, or not a great magician, and did a lot of colorful props and inventions and stuff like that. So that was a really easy thing to follow. And then obviously further on into MST3K, that was I was just really it's a group, as you know, it's a group effort to make content. It's like, I mean, I know some people can do it on their own, but you're really relying on a lot of different people to do stuff. And that's what's fun about it, is collaborating, working with people, etc.
And at this time, are you feeling like a struggling artist? Like, is it tough to pay the bills? Are you making good money, or what did
I
it
was
feel like?
super lucky. I mean, within 2 or 3 months of being in LA, I got on Letterman, and then I got on the Young Comedian special. So it's just the timing. My timing was really lucky. It was just, cable was just taking off. There were just 3 or 4 networks prior to that, and cable started right when stand-up kind of got big. So I just was very fortunate in being in that pocket. So I didn't really have to struggle too hard. My nut was very low. I was single in my early 20s, just had an apartment and a cheap car, and really just had a nut that I had to make. So I was okay. And then, so I was always grateful, always lucky, and really I think I really haven't had a straight job since I was in college. Pretty much. It was all, I think I've been just swinging from tree to tree creatively over the last 45 years.
Was the move to LA like, all right, let's get famous, get a TV show, or was it like, I just want to grow my comedy career and end up being, a touring comedian type of thing? Like, what was your goal moving out there? Because obviously you had something in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think LA represented that kind of whole story of the tournament, like going to the big city and seeing if you had the skills to participate on that level. And it was a really wonderful time. Just my, kind of like really happy memories of being in that place and working with people. And guys that were around then were like, I don't know if you remember any of these. Sam Kinison was like in the clubs, and of course back then Richard Pryor would drop into the Comedy Store, and Robin Williams was there, Jim Carrey and I started out at the same time, and so he was like, but he was a phenomenon right away. Like it was kind of like he was pretty amazing right off the bat. So his career, I mean, I think I saw him, and then within 6 months he had his own sitcom. He did. It was called The Duck Factory. It was a he was just so extraordinarily talented.
Was that in like the 80s?
Yeah, early 80s, yeah. And so that's kind of just to paint a picture of how long ago that was, and what were the characters that were kind of around that. Gary Shandling. But again, I don't know if these if you guys remember these guys, these people.
So then, when did MST3 become a thing? Was that something you thought up, or was it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Like the conception.
In the story, I was a stand-up, and I just happened to be in situations with Jerry Seinfeld. We became friends in LA, and I kind of had my career as a stand-up. You had asked about how that worked, and I did get offered a sitcom, and I just didn't think I was right for it, and I didn't exactly feel like it was funny. Like I didn't think I could be good in it, but also on top of that, I was always very nervous about being associated with like failed project or a project where I couldn't do well, and I felt this kind of obligation to my audience, the people who liked what I did or saw what I did. It's kind of an imaginary fan base. I just knew that people would come to see me in clubs and people were paying attention, but I don't think that there was anything that was ever really formal about knowing who my fan base was. But I was definitely passing on shows that I think other people were taking just because I think they had probably a better attitude, but it was like, I'm going to try everything and see what works. But I just felt this obligation to the people who were watching me, the people who kind of supported me, and I wanted to do well. So there were things I definitely passed on, just like little things that were happening. Like I got to meet with Pat Proft, who is one of the guys from the Zucker Brothers movies, who did Airplane and all these great comedies. And I had just seen, I just, in some ways, it kind of kept me from really advancing certain ideas, but I just was kind of like, they had done Bachelor Party, or he had done Bachelor Party, and I saw it and I just didn't really like it, and I just was kind of like, I'm a little nervous, like getting involved. It was for the force of it, that the idea that you could get involved, but you would never be able to really have autonomy in those situations. You're really signing on to do whatever they need you to do. Yeah. And I just wasn't super comfortable outside that, so I wasn't enough of a clever like actor to go, I can go into the situation and win. I just had this kind of what I could do on stage and what I was comfortable doing. So
was there something unique about your brand of comedy that you wanted to be true to,
Yeah, I just kind of not necessarily. I think what I did was very because you use puppets and you use props and stuff, I really didn't do adult material, and that was really important back in the day. Like being dirty was like this epiphany for people, like, oh my God, he said a naughty word, right? And so I just didn't want to go there, and that was there were two really different schools there where I just kind of felt like somehow I found a way to be funny and I'm not dirty. I'm going to kind of stay in that pocket.
Yeah, was that like a moral decision on your behalf, or you just?
I felt so, just because you're doing things with toys and puppets, and I think that's that natural inclination to go, I'm going to be dirty with a kid show. Yeah, dirty magic show. Right. Dirty puppet show, right? And so I did feel an obligation to that, like all the people that had supported me and liked what I did. And so the manifestation of that Well, I was getting to something. I'm sorry. Started talking about Seinfeld, and so I got to write on his first HBO special, which was called Stand Up Confidential. It was a great experience. He's a wonderful guy, and at the end of it, I'm going, wow, this is great. I'm writing for Seinfeld. This is before he was really famous and had done Seinfeld, but I was kind of going, wow, this is great. I kind of like not having to be on camera. Wow, would that ever be cool if I could be a writer and get like Seinfeld to do stuff, like be on camera? And so I pitched him this idea, this half-baked idea for a science fiction movie that featured him. And he looked at me and he just goes, "This isn't a show for me. This is a show for you." That's what he kind of looked at me and said. And I went home and I go, he's right. Like, I'm really trying to pose this thing on the guy, trying to talk him into it. And he's not having it. It's not him. And so I started to go, yeah, maybe I'm just like, maybe I should be doing this, or maybe I could make something that I could be myself in and do something in. And so there were a couple of ideas at work that kind of helped me get to MST. But a couple of the simple things was I had noticed, that was just the beginning of the VHS kind of thing. And I had noticed that there were certain movies that would appear in video stores and they didn't have a copyright. There were public domain movies. And I started to go, hey, it's kind of funny, but these kind of forgotten movies, these low budget science fiction movies, there's a fair amount of them that are public domain. Could I make a show with those? And so with that, including a few other ideas that I had kind of picked up over the years, kind of started with that. Also a thing called the Turkey Awards, which the Medved brothers wrote, which was kind of a inversion of the Academy Awards, which was awards for the worst movies ever made. So it had like things like Glenn or Glenda, or Terror of Tiny Town, or Ed Wood stuff, the Ed Wood movies. So that was where I first started to learn about those and kind of thought, why isn't anybody making a show with these? And so all that kind of congealed together, along with the idea of the silhouettes, the idea of the theater seats and the characters. And I just really kind of thought, nobody wants to see silhouettes of three like doughy white guys like sitting in a theater. Maybe I could change the shape, right? A person and a couple of robots. So when you see them talking, you see Crow's mouth move, or see Tom move his arms around or something. You kind of know who's talking. So that kind of moved that forward, that idea of if these sardonic guys who are saying stuff during the movie, why don't they leave? Like, if they don't like the movie, and that's kind of where the idea of the mad scientists who are insisting he watch these movies, where all that came from. So those are all the pieces, and we did it locally on a little UHF channel called what was it, KTMA, and we did like over 20 shows locally, and just kind of got a footing for it. People liked it, and we just started to kind of push into that. And as time went on, just got better and better at it. We really improvised the whole thing in front of the audience. It's like this little skunk works we had created in Minnesota. But
did you have like a budget in those early episodes?
Oh yeah, it was all done through Channel 23, and the guys who were there was Kevin Murphy and Jim Mallon, and those guys became partners in making Mystery Science Theater. They were the production guys. They figured out how to get it all to stick to the tape. So it's just, as you guys know, it's just so essential to get that stuff right as well. And so all those pieces came together, and again, we were just super lucky. We were on in right when after the MTV revolution, they started going, well, maybe there could be a comedy channel that would work like MTV, and it just so happened we had cut together a cell tape of all the best moments of MST, and when it was all finished and I looked at it, I go, oh, I get it. The whole show needs to be like this, where we're like talking the whole time. But prior to that, it wasn't super clear how much people could manage, right? How much multitasking can an audience do? Turns out they're great at it, and they can watch a movie and hear you talk. And so, but I remember going into it like, when is this going to be like a blur for people? You know, so we kind of slowly moved into that space to the point where we, you know, the first season we did it for Comedy Central, we had like 350 riffs. And in a season, we're up to 700 riffs. And that's kind of where it remains to this day, kind of.
You kind of doubled that, like jokes per minute.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's about 10 per minute usually. And it just became this kind of conveyor belt for jokes to do.
So you guys were one of like the launch shows of Comedy Central as a network?
Yeah, I think so. I think we were
That's
right in
crazy.
that pocket. I mean, it was really funny. I think right around, I'm thinking the year we premiered, this same year The Simpsons started and the same year that Twin Peaks started. Those were the two big shows of that era. And we were on lists with them, like top 10 TV shows of the year. So there's The Simpsons and there's Mystery Science Theater, with a difference in budget that was ridiculous. I think we made those shows, I think they were $35,000 the first season for a 90-minute show.
Did
For the
that
whole
make the
season.
show like very profitable? The fact that it was a really low budget?
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out really great for us because our costs were super low compared to Hollywood or New York. We basically built our own studio in a warehouse space, and that was unheard of. But again, the technology was getting there, and chip cameras, and before long, Avids were happening. Back when an Avid was like $100,000 to get into an Avid, and by the time I had gotten done there, we had an edit bay and everything in this little.
You were in Wisconsin.
This is in Minnesota.
Minnesota,
In an
okay.
industrial park in Minnesota, we made Mystery Science Theater, and we made 22 shows a year, and it was a really great leisurely pace to make a show like that. So that was, I think that's kind of how we were able to do it. It was just, we were super lucky. We'd get orders every year that would pay for everything. Way easier than having to go do Kickstarter and raise money that way. The thing I learned about Kickstarter that people should be alert to is what we learned is, as wonderful as it's been, you get paid once, you work twice, really. You make the show, which you're supposed to do, but you then also have to do the rewards. So you just have to build that in. And so, but that's the part that the last season we did was a bit of a blur because there was so much fulfillment we needed to do. And it was during COVID.
its own business on the
it was
side,
during
yeah.
COVID. So that was, again, super grateful we did every bit of it, but it just shows how the industry had changed. Where back in the day, all you needed, someone would give you an order for 22, you'd go away, make the shows, deliver them, that was it. And it became different later, but again, is just one of the most amazing things in my life to be able to come back to Mystery Science Theater, bring it back with an all new cast, and land it on Netflix, which is like the biggest network in the world, and have it there now. So we were really, really lucky.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wanted to ask a little bit about when you guys were producing the show with Comedy Central. Did you have full creative direction on like the content of the show?
Yeah, we were very lucky. It was just so unique, and they didn't have anything to compare it to. So they were busy. We were far away. It was really pre-digital. Like, I think we had
the
fax
perfect setup.
machines or something, to send messages or something. But it was so early in it all that they left us alone because because we were producing so much content, like we said, 700 riffs, you have a development person reading through these and try to find umbrage, and we remained okay because we weren't dirty, and so that was like kind of it worked in our favor. They were always like, when are these guys going to make this something we need to be afraid of? And it was like we never went there. So we had a pretty great, carefree relationship with Comedy Central, and I think that the only time I remember them really being serious about notes was they would complain that when we did a black and white movie, you'd lose the silhouettes. And there was one show we did, I think it was Robot Monster, where they asked us to tint the silhouettes green, and I just hated it because it didn't look right. And so after that, we asked our editor who said, "Oh, I know how to fix this. You just blew the black and white, and suddenly the silhouette popped, so it was back to normal." But that was the only note while I was there we ever got from the network. So there's simply no interference. We were really lucky. And the same is true for Netflix. I think the only thing they said to me was, I did these kind of bumpers that kind of make you feel like you're going to a commercial, where Patton would come on and say something and do kind of a synopsis of where we were at. And they said, don't do that anymore because it makes people think there's supposed to be a commercial, and we don't have commercials. So we cut that for the next season we did for them. But that's the only note we ever got.
And they have commercials now on Netflix, I think.
Is that right?
I think
Is
there's
that
like a
right?
cheaper tier, I think.
Really? Wow.
So you were ahead of your time on Netflix. Yeah.
I haven't been paying attention.
So were you basically the showrunner, like on the production? Like
No. Well, we really evolved.
I'm curious what, the management structure
we really evolved that. So I would, Jim Allen and I were the exec producers of it, and we kind of split it. He was the production guy, I was the creative guy, and so we didn't really. I guess maybe the first season I was the showrunner as far as that goes, but it became super clear that Mike Nelson was a really good writer, and we said, let's let that guy be the head writer. He can kind of run the room, because we were already starting to get the principals were getting pulled out to do other things because the show was taking off. So there was a fair amount of time where we'd have to go in and do meetings, and we had enough people in the writing room to keep it hot in the writing room and keep going. And so we duck out, and Mike and the rest of the people that were there, Mary Jo Peel, Frank Conniff, and Paul Chapman, were all there to kind of keep things rolling. So that's kind of how we did it. But we didn't really observe, because this show is so unique, it didn't really fit a format. And it wasn't like I had kind of adopted the format from something else that we could use as a model. We were really making it up as we went along. So we had our own unique style for writing, and our own timetable to turn the show around and stuff like that. We were really, truly just making it up as we went along.
That's kind of nice for like a fresh concept where you didn't get jaded by working in some crazy writers' rooms. Like, it sounds like you did some writing stuff, but you weren't in one of those sitcom writers' rooms where there's like the 10 guys around the table.
Yeah,
you'll do this episode, you'll do that episode.
You're right. And there were really, I never felt like, especially the times that I hung out and sat in rooms, I never felt like I was especially great at that. I much preferred the way we did it, where we're watching a movie together and saying stuff and just generating material. But the idea of trying to pitch jokes and stories at the same time, and I thought culturally it was terrible, because the showrunner or the exec producer basically had a fiefdom, and they all had varying styles where there was no agreed on like procedure, and so everybody was slightly different, and you had to kind of shape yourself to those writers. And I always felt like that seemed ridiculous. So I never really, like you said, I never really got going in a room like that. Was always envious of people who did, but it just wasn't who I was. So I wasn't great at that.
Collaborative writing is so weird in general. Like you got to really have the right people, or it's just
Yeah.
awkward, or
Yeah,
doesn't
you
work.
have to be familiar with each other, like each other. You have to be in the right mood, and it's got to be buoyant and carefree. And that's the hard part, is kind of when you have any amount of stress for fulfillment and the quality. You're interested in the quality. But if you fuss it too much and if you complain too much, it won't get funnier. So you can't go, needs to get 20% funnier.
Right.
People who talk like that are not welcome in writers' rooms. People who generally complain it's
Right.
not funny enough without suggesting an
Jotting down
idea.
ideas, not
Those
suggesting
people
anything.
are, they represent kind of the worst of the gatekeeper kind of model. The idea that I'm going to bat away ideas until I hear a good one.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really work that way. So, yeah.
What would you say are some of the most challenging aspects of producing a show or having comedy be the product you're creating as a business?
Like I said, you really want to create a mood that people are comfortable in. It's really essential, and there are some ways to avoid what you have when you have writers in a room is you have a group of people that are there for you. They're a resource for you, and you have to kind of have an attitude and a mood in the room like it's appreciated and we're all moving in the right direction and there's no such thing as a bad idea, because really there isn't. It's how you're kind of looking at it. So yeah, the job is don't fuss too much. That's that's a rabbit hole that you can't get out of. It's what you're hoping for is just kind of I don't know. I guess it'd be similar to competitive sports. You know how they say with golfing, you have to, if you're too serious and you're too tight, you won't play well. If you're not relaxed enough, you won't do well. And that's true with being in a room together. And you just have to be kind of feeling like you're kind of glad to be there and you kind of want to amuse each other. So it's not a big thing, but it's way different than like feeling like you're judged and, oh, I gotta make everybody laugh. Oh, what do I do? Where's that idea? So it's a really different kind of a really different level of intensity that needs to be manageable and needs to be sustainable. And I think it's keeping regular hours. I think you want to avoid the kind of overly dramatic writer who has to stay up late or works arduously long hours. And I've always found it way easy. Like I have in my notebook in front of me, this is 196. So I started these in college, and they're basically just laundry lists and drawings of stuff that I'm thinking about. And, this was what I was drawing last night, which is a magic trick I'm working on. But to me, this takes care of a lot of it because I just kind of routinely write ideas down and have them banked, and I go back at it when they're full and highlight them and kind of keep track of them. So I have this that's kind of always brewing stuff, and so I don't really have to think about it. So that's kind of another thing too that helps me a lot, is just kind of blithely writing ideas down while I'm doing my day.
You just let it go from your like. That's like we're like in business side of things. We take so many notes on everything, every stupid little idea and whatever, just because then you can just let it go and like, all right, what was I doing? And you're not like, shit, what was I talking about last week? And
Not haunted by circulating ideas in your brain, kind of driving you crazy. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly right, because I learned when I started this was for a sculpture class, and it's part of the syllabus, and the sculpture teacher, Stu Luckman, he said, get a blank book, one of these blank hardbound sketch books. So it was like this thing, and I go, who does this guy think he is? Like, he's going to teach us something that's got to be put in a hardbound book. What's wrong with the spiral bound thing with the line paper and all that? And I don't know, but I started to realize, like, I started drawing sculpture ideas, but quickly I was like drawing magic tricks and drawing puppet ideas. And so I didn't realize it, but it was exactly what I needed, just to kind of drop ideas and have them reside somewhere.
You mean the fact that it has no lines, just a blank page, kind of
I
frees up your
think
mind?
so. I think so. And the other thing I do that's unique, I think, is I start at the back of the book, and I'm left-handed, so I start at the bottom and kind of go up. And because when you don't use your right hand to write, it, you know, you can just
I'm a lefty
see,
too.
yeah, you can see the junk on my hands just from this few notes I've taken. But and that's doing it almost completely backwards. You know,
You write right to left?
I don't do
Okay.
that, but no, thank goodness I don't do that. But I do like, I find it kind of liberating to have all this empty space, and you kind of fill it up that way rather than going down and to the right. I go up and to the left. So
Yeah.
that's all. But that was another thing, just simply designed to take the pressure off, because it just, once you're nervous about it or have to have an idea, it's like, it's really hard. They don't reside there. They reside in that kind of carefree space, right? The place where you're playful and having fun, and you're in a good mood, right? You have to be. So I guess to answer your question, Jeremy, I think that's like one of the biggest things when you feel like, with comedy, I mean, number one of the biggest rules is you don't call it comedy. That's also a really funny thing. Like, people who write comedy tend not to really call themselves comedians, because it's just like, well, prove it. Show me you're funny. You call yourself a comedian, say something funny,
be
right?
funny.
And it's like, it kind of gets in the way of what you're trying to do. So it's really this creative act. Hopefully something will come out that you think is funny, but that's also really hard to say. I'm selling funny. You come to me for the funny,
Right.
and stay for the fun. You know, it's like, it's really more. I feel I'm more comfortable. It's a creative endeavor. It's a creative pursuit, and people expect it to be funny, so you look for jokes that you can park in there and kind of make stuff happen. But there's a million other things that work, right? With anything you're trying to do, as far as being on camera, how does it look? What's the mood? How fast does it move? You know, there's all those nice things you can do, like with editing and pacing and stuff. So yeah.
And with the magic stuff, it sounds like that's something you never really stopped. We were talking the other day. You were saying that, like, on the set and stuff, you were kind of inventing things and kind of bringing that, like, magical invention thing to, like, set props and stuff.
Yeah, it worked really good with MST, and I did that deliberately because I love in camera and love that where you can see the seams, and there's something about it that just kind of it has like an integrity to it. I don't know how to explain it other than I mean, I don't know. We had a lot of things like that on MST, where there's just a little gimmick that does something that's just a little pleasing. It's a little accent, right? The little in-camera things, just a moment to kind of anchor you, like, oh, they went the extra mile and made I can't even come up with a good
custom props.
analogy. Yeah, it's just some prop that'll transform or make a noise or something like that.
Were you performing magic throughout the years? Like,
I'm just a hobbyist. I
keeping
just
it on the
love
hobbies.
it. I mean, I don't know. I just absorbed so much of it growing up and read everything I could. And I was really just on a path, path of curiosity and interest. That kind of magic worked really good in there. I just liked it. I don't know why. I think too that it's manageable when you're a magician or a comic magician like I was. You can make the props and kind of keep them with you and maintain those things and have a bit that works every time. It's just this, like, you carry those things around with you.
Well, that's something else, kind of as we come to a close here, I wanted to kind of ask is what's your take for people who are younger on the creative side and trying to find a way to make it a profession? The world's changed so much from back when, like I said, Comedy Central was invented. You were part of the launch of that network. Now, I forget, there's some huge percentage of young people that they want to be a YouTuber or an influencer as a career.
I think that's the number one like desired career of American kids these days.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
an influencer.
right.
It's
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and it's kind of like where I came from. The whole idea was to make media more personal than it was. It was much more. When you think of how sitcoms were done before Mystery Science Theater, it was very formal. It was a format and something people observed. And often comedies had laugh tracks, right? Or they had a live audience. Only a few didn't. Like maybe, I guess, during the operating scenes in MASH, they wouldn't have laughs, but almost every sitcom had a laugh track. Mystery Science Theater didn't. We weren't ever going to go there because it was more personal than that. It was more immediate and faster than that. And so I was trying, like most people did in that time, was to try to subvert the media to be a little more personal, a little more real. And it was all style, right? And so now that's all been, that power structure is gone, and you can shoot really beautiful things on your phone and edit great things on your phone and make stuff. And that's fantastic, and that's wonderful. And we're seeing that, like, God, just the littlest thing on YouTube, like when you want to learn how to fix your car, or what does it mean when the engine light goes on, or how do you reset your clock, and you can watch a video. It's just amazing. So I think we're seeing the benefits of all that. But as far as I don't really have any advice because I'm really from another generation. You know, I really truly am from a pre-digital world, really. And so I don't have really a lot to say other than it seems available for people if they want to, and it's really great. And my thought is, if I had anything to say, is if you have an instinct, the thing you really have to fight is talking about it rather than doing it, right? Because there is a thing that happens when you have a great idea and you start telling it to people. They say that takes the onus off of you actually doing it, right? So if you post on social media, I got this big idea, you're less likely to do it because you've already been satisfied. I already told you that I got a great idea. I don't have to show you. And so I think that's kind of a trap that people can get in. It's more intellectual rather than the action. And so I would say that's really important to what we're talking about. And some people are just acclimated and ready to, I must do this. I want to show you. And other people are a little more like, I'm going to be academic and think of the perfect idea and then act. But it's very dangerous. You must act. You must act. So like that's
that, productive procrastination, what we call it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So it's a dance we all have to struggle with, and you have to kind of work on. But that's really where the rubber meets the road, right? That's really what we're talking about, because people, and we're only talking about people who might be frustrated, and there's a lot of people that are completely satisfied, completely happy with what they're doing. But if you have aspirations, I would just say you must act. You know, I don't need to hear I don't really want to hear your ideas if you're just trying to affect me and make it so I can't have that. It's almost a way of cock blocking someone is saying, I got this idea, you don't get this idea. I told you my idea, and you just kind of go, thanks a lot. you should go do your idea, right?
Right.
So it's just that's the only thing I'd caution people about is talking is not doing.
Yeah, we actually see a lot of that. A lot of people come in here with ideas. I got this idea. It's like, do you want to produce it for us? We're like, we don't want to produce it.
Yeah,
You know,
like
it's like,
the
you can
partnership. We'll give you 50% of the business if you do the videos for free. It's like, we don't do that. Sorry.
Yeah, you're basically telling us that you don't believe in your own idea because you're willing to give away like 50%.
Well, it's like Seinfeld, right? It's me saying, hey, Jerry, we're friends. You want to do this cool idea I got? And he goes, no, I don't want to do it. You do it. And I did. So it worked out.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, what's coming up for you? Is there any magic shows that we can catch?
Oh yeah, I'm working on my magic act. I'm doing a benefit in the new year. I have a slow build, but I'm doing a benefit in the new year. Where I'm going to be doing my magic show, and it's just been a long build, and I have a lot of other things to do. For example, Mateo, who's right over there, my son, who's is actually in production boot camp here at Edge of Cinema. He's interning for you guys, and I can kind of reveal that we're gonna go to Chicago this summer and work with a friend of mine, Gabe, who has a magic auction house called Potter and Potter. So we're working on a documentary about him. So we're going to be starting to do that this summer, and it's probably a year-long project, and we might conclude in next summer. But it's basically telling the story of his auction house. And then we're also doing a Mystery Science Theater auction, which is the stuff that's from elements from the last 3 seasons, puppets and the props and some of the costumes, that we used to make the show. So that's happening too. So I'm working on getting all that stuff shipped to Chicago, and then we're going to start using that too. So that's kind of the next thing.
That's super exciting. Yeah. I
And
definitely want to bid on some of the stuff, get something for our shelves.
Oh, sure, man. And then the other thing is, there's so much cool magic in Chicago. There's some cool clubs there, and close-up magic really started in Chicago. So I'm hoping I can just get I'm going to be around a lot of good magicians, so I want to kind of bring my stuff and show it to them and get ideas and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that too.
Awesome.
Well, that would be awesome. And yeah, for MST, if USAID can give $20 million to Iraq for Sesame Street over there, I feel like there might be some kind of
Iraq
a local funding
MST.
here.
Yeah, I know, right?
MST
Why not? Why not?
We do America good.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks you guys.
Oh,
Thanks
of course,
for
Joel.
having me.
Thanks
It's
so
great
much
to
for
be
coming.
here. Yeah.
It was awesome to get to hang out. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.